And I found that, over time, I had to work for everything. So it wasn't, for me at least, it wasn't like things just came naturally and like I would go try a trick and it just worked. Like I had to put in the time to do everything that I've accomplished. Like I was spending time doing full cab true top horns for hours to figure out what made it click for me. And then I would usually find tricks that were adjacent to that trick to do to kind of grow and expand my skill sets. So
That's what we call blue collar blading right there, and that's what I've always referenced myself as, like not necessarily talented, but put in the time to get it
yep.
over and over again till it turns out. But ton of respect for that. I was also going to say, like, I love that mentality of the trying the 10, having it, trying it 10 times in a row to have it, or Austin going and every time he skates, try a true fish. A lot of the things I tell myself when skating now at this stage in life, when I'm trying to get a clip, I'm like, you just got to get one. You just have to land one. But
Yeah.
I like the approach of like the 10. It's like very like a seems like a martial arts approach almost, you know?
Yeah, I tried to be very systematic about it because when you're trying to learn stuff that you've seen on videos, you don't really have much guidance. So like you see somebody do something on a video and you're like, oh, it makes sense for them to do it. But then when you go try it, it's like, this is just crazy. I don't know how they got there. So to having to do systematic little changes to make sure it works and trying to understand what those changes are and why it works was more of my focus. So it helped progress things a lot quicker than I think others would progress.
Did you bring that stuff to like Woodward when you worked there? Because you were a counselor at Woodward for many, many years, and you worked there. So like you were teaching kids how to skate. I'm
Yeah.
assuming.
So when I started working at Woodward in '99 was my first year at Woodward, and it was actually kind of on a whim. Um, John Liskey, he was working there over the summer. He's a Baltimore skate OG that was around, and I was managing Spicy Skate Park, and he had given me a call and said, "Hey, we need counselors. Do you want to come up for a week?" I was like, "Sure, no reason not to." Um, and I think I was a counselor for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then I ended up just doing instruction um, at Woodward, where we had groups of kids that we would teach things, and um, I love the idea of trying to pass on the knowledge that you've kind of learned from skating as a whole to other people. Um, what's funny about Woodward though is that every week during the prime of Woodward, you'd have a new bunch of kids there, and the higher groups that you would get, they were there more to show that they were good than learn anything.
Hmm.
So the first couple days was always like I had to prove that I deserved to be their instructor, which
It's like
was
a
always
battle.
a challenge. Like it was always like every week it's like, okay, a whole new group of kids. Like, all right, let's do this again. Like it was always kind of a challenge to do that. But it was some of the best years of my life living there and teaching kids and trying to pass on what I've learned.
Hmm.
That's so fascinating to me. Like, there are a few people who I've like met throughout the years that have like said like you've been their counselor, or some other people like who we know like um, Adam Kilgore was there for a long time, and yeah, some like other friends like the names some names escape me right now, but that's interesting that they would try to like battle test you to make sure like you were worthy of being like the counselor.
Yeah, I never heard that.
I don't know if it was necessarily they were focused on me specifically, but they would come with like a group of their friends. So everybody would come, like the Boston crew would come, the Texas crew would come, and like they're there with their boys. Like their whole crew is there and they're like really good. Like I don't want to discredit them at all. Like they're killing it. But when they're in group, it was the kind of teenage mentality of like, I'm too good for this. I don't need anything. And trying to connect with people and connect with those kids just to say, hey, there's always stuff to learn. There's things that you've either avoided or not done, or everybody has holes in their game that they could learn something from. So try and make that connection with them. So it was always a challenge. And at Woodward, the first day you're there, they actually had to not let people skate because everyone would go so hard that they would just break themselves off and be done all week. So the first night was when all the employees would skate, like all the counselors would go session, and the kids would just be walking around trying to see what the deal was, trying to understand what camp was and see who was there.
That was your time to show off then.
Yeah, that was our time to like, okay, we got to do good enough that they're like respectful.
Right. Yeah.
But I love that what you said there. There's always something to learn, and I think that you can take that in 20, 30, 40 years, however long you're skating. A lot of people's favorite skaters maybe can't look over the other shoulder. Like sometimes, like, or can't pump fakie. Like some of the most fundamental things that, like, when you apply it switch or you apply it in these other areas. So it is very much like a martial art in that way. And I really like that approach of just always trying to like find those holes in your game and then try to like repair your suit, like, like your armor suit, and like to become a full suit.
And what's crazy too is like some of those little things that you do to like step up your game open up so many different things that you're not aware of until you learn that basic thing. One of the big ones is switch fakie is by far one of the hardest things to learn if you don't do it regularly. And especially when you go to like a mini ramp and on transitions, to ride switch fakie looking over the other shoulder with the other foot and back is a nightmare. And once you get to a certain level of being good, you're very reluctant to kind of go back to the beginning to learn those basic things.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah.
Most of the time, when you go to a skate park, your pride wants you to be able to show at a certain level.
Absolutely.
Like you kind of want to be able to be like, okay, I can hold my own. This is fine. But when you're learning switch fakie, you get humbled real quick because you go into it thinking, oh, I can go faster than this. I've been skating for 20 years. This is fine. You get switch fakie, and then you run into a quarter pipe like a wall. Mm-hmm. And then you're getting up off the ground trying to figure out what happened. So it's good to have those things that you can still work on and try to be humble about it.
There's a lot of fundamentals that most of us skip because we're just so focused on doing the tricks, right? We're so focused on like, okay, I learned the Royale. Now let me try a 270 Royale. Let me try a 450 Royale. You forget the basics that are probably more important than learning anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, and I think it's true. Like when you're a kid getting into skating, like your primary concern isn't kind of like to get all the fundamentals down and then like build yourself up right. You want to like look cool. You want to do cool stuff. You want to like hit a rail and like, oh, let me do something alley-oop. Let me jump off the biggest thing. And you might neglect these other parts. And then when you build yourself to a certain place, it's like you said, it's really hard to go back down to humble yourself again, because you can have like even this established name, but trying to learn something completely like out of pocket, like you can look like a real rookie out there, and it could be embarrassing. It could be humbling. You could look vulnerable, but it's so necessary and super important. Absolutely. So it's good to just be able to create the space to do that.
What's crazy too, on the kind of flip side of that, as skating got larger and the tricks got more difficult, there actually became a time when people started doing hurricane stuff. So like hurricane topsouls, hurricane sweat stances, that kind of stuff, all the spin to win stuff, that if you already knew how to like do 540s and spin, it was harder to learn hurricane stuff. But if you didn't know how to spin and you could pencil spin, you could do all that hurricane stuff a lot easier. So a lot of people, they get to a certain level and they have to unlearn how to spin so that you drop your feet and spin quicker and then put your feet on, as opposed to trying to do a bio 5 to a kind grind and it's just not working.
Never thought of it that way.
Yeah, like
that's why I suck at these tricks.
It's one of the things, like unlearning how to spin so that you're picking your feet up after you've done the spin is one of the hardest things to learn when you're trying to progress into like kind of that next level of difficulty of trick. So a lot of kids would come and they would struggle with some of the basic stuff, but could do like hurricane front royales, and I would just be blown away. Like I don't understand that, because I went through the process of kind of learning everything like soul grind to Mizu to Pornstar to that, and then do half cap to all of them in like kind of a systematic way. And other people go right up this silo to like hurricane stuff and like can put on that front of like, okay, I'm killing it, and killing it in one silo is still good, but it's like there's so many other things too that you find holes really easily.
Mm-hmm.
No, we totally had that in like New York because we were like such like rail people. We were doing like alley-oop tricks on rails maybe before even the soul grind. Like because like I mean we had learned the soul grind, but then we just like didn't spend any time refining it. We just like rushed to the next trick, like trying to like progress as quick as you can, and you kind of get better at those, and that becomes more of a comfort zone than like the soul grind or like the Royale. And it's really fascinating that.
Or how about people doing rails, throwing themselves down rails and not being able to roll fakie out of the tricks? Because I've definitely seen that before. Like you do a soul grind down the rail and you just run off it, or you land fakie and they don't know how to like turn around afterwards. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, you can tell the people that were focused on grinds or focused on rails or even ledges to a certain extent. And then for me, being an instructor, it was like, okay, where can I find these holes? And it was usually like the more like, okay, let's ride fakie or let's just skating or like looking over both shoulders. And people would be very angry at me about that. They would get frustrated real quick.
I can picture that.
No, I could totally see that. And like speaking for like myself, even as like a young kid, like I think I was trying to hit rails before I knew how to skate. Like, sure, I knew how to like skate backwards and go forwards, but like I didn't spend much time learning like how to skate. I feel like at least like there's been so much evolution in skating. Like that's one of like the things now that people can like look at, like, oh, the movements that you're embracing. Like we used to just try to like get to the rail and get to the bottom, and how we came off of it, it didn't matter. And like all those little things. So it's interesting to see like the evolution in that period. And it's funny to hear that you had like the idea of like the basic fundamentals and teaching it to the kids even at that era.
Yeah. It was it was great times. I mean, those fundamentals make it so much easier to do all the other things. It's like knowing how to skate up to something prepares you to be able to do whatever gnarly trick you want to do on the rail, and it gives you that stable base to ride away. Like it makes it way easier than people like there was kids coming to Woodward that would have a setup or a skate that like barely rolled. Some people like the wheels were shot like, and they're basically stepping to go to things just to do the grind, and when they were doing the grind they're good to go, but like getting to it was a challenge. So like just doubling down on that kind of stuff was great. And at that time at Woodward, they had both AM groups and afternoon groups, like younger kids in the morning and then teenagers at night or in the afternoon. So there was like 800 plus kids at camp just rollerblading. So it was like the prime of Woodward.
There were so many kids probably on little tiny worn out wheels because their poor parents spent all their money sending them to Woodward. They couldn't afford wheels for their skates anymore. It was so expensive. Yeah.